The final week of the regular season is here. We're going to get into it. I'll tell you why I don't care about the Bengals draft position, as so many people are up in arms about. We'll talk about Dwayne Haskins. We will talk about my picks against the spread, which were dreadful once again. But we'll start with the moment Cleveland has been waiting for. 3 calendar years ago this week, the Browns were trying to avoid becoming the third winless team in NFL history and just the second 0-16 team in NFL history. Of course, they went on to do that. They went 0-16 in 2017. They followed that up, going 7-8-1, and then 6-10 under Freddie Kitchens. But here we are. It is Week 17. The Browns have a win, and you're into the playoffs scenario. They're at home. They're against the Steelers. This is what the city of Cleveland has been waiting for nearly 20 years now. And here's how they can do it. Let's start with this. Here's how the Cleveland Browns can clinch a playoff spot this weekend. The most simple one is win. Beat the Steelers and you are into the playoffs. If they lose and the Colts lose, they're still in. So they lose, Indianapolis also loses, and they're in. Now, there's some other things that could happen. Even in the event the Browns lose, if Tennessee would lose at Houston, the Colts play the Jaguars, by the way, if Tennessee loses at Houston, plus Miami beats Buffalo and Baltimore beats Cincinnati, they're still in. Or in the event the Browns tie and any one of Baltimore, Miami, or Tennessee loses, any one of those 3, Ravens, Dolphins, Titans, lose with the Browns tying, which probably won't happen, then they're still in. But as simple as it gets, you beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I think you're a better team than right now, and you are into the playoffs with an 11-5 record, which again is amazing considering, look at this, from 2014 to 2017, that 4-year stretch, they won 11 games. They could do that this year alone. And like I said, it's the moment, it's that chance to turn the corner for Cleveland, right? If they don't make the playoffs, to me, they haven't turned that corner. If you cannot get to the postseason after the year you've had, because in late November, it looked like a lock that the Browns would go to the postseason. And then with a chance to make that lock a reality, you go up against the 1-13 New York Jets, whose coach should have been fired in September, whose running back is 75 years old, and you cannot win the game. And I know all the excuses, I get it. And you know what? They're not excuses. I take that back. There are reasons. There are differences in excuses and reasons, and the Browns had reasons as to why they really couldn't do anything on Sunday at the Meadowlands. I get it. But you got another shot, and that's why you bank those games. That's why you go on the road and beat the Titans. That's why you beat the Bengals in the last 30 seconds of the game. So that when you do come upon hard times, as the Browns did this week, you don't have to be in a must-win scenario. This week, different story, must-win, with Pittsburgh coming to town. The Browns are a cursed team, I believe that, but can they overcome this COVID situation? Can they beat the big bag Steelers? By the way, they have not beat Pittsburgh in back-to-back years since 1999-2000. It hasn't happened this century. Chance to happen this Sunday. Of course, they beat the Mason Rudolph-led Steelers last year. So, will we see Mason Rudolph on Sunday? I don't know. A lot of people assume that's going to happen. The Steelers still have a shot at the number 2 seed in the AFC. If the Bills were to lose, the Bills, by the way, I'm recording this on Monday, mid-afternoon. If the Bills win at New England tonight, they still have to beat Miami next week to clinch that number 2 seed. If they lose either tonight or next week, and Pittsburgh beats Cleveland, Pittsburgh gets the 2 seed, Buffalo drops to the 3. So the Steelers have something to play for, as do the Bills, of course. But at any rate, Cleveland has not beat Pittsburgh in back-to-back years since 99-2000, since they came back to the NFL after those dirty Baltimore folks stole their team. Browns got a lot to overcome. Their receivers cannot practice with the team until Thursday, and that assumes they all test negative up until that point. They've got to overcome Cody Parkey, who I said last week, it just feels like if they do make this postseason, you can see him walking off the field with his head down in shame. I mean, you got a chance to get within 3, and you can't hit an extra point. I don't know how you keep him. You got to bring someone in this week at least, right? Cleveland with a chance to break the curse. And at full strength, I think they're better than the Steelers right now. The Steelers came back and beat the Colts on Sunday in what was quite the NFL football game, but I'm still not all in. You should never be down 21-7 at home in the first place to Phillip Rivers, another 95-year-old NFL player, which great for them. They're certainly in better shape at that age than I am at my current age, but are the Steelers really a threat to anyone if they need to come back from down 21-7 in a must-win situation? I just think the Browns are a better team than the Steelers right now. That doesn't mean they're, I still think Ben Roethlisberger, I have to think there's something. I don't buy into the whole age thing with him right now. Maybe Jason La Canfora actually got one right and his knee is bothering him. I don't know. I go back and forth on that one because at the beginning of the year, he looked pretty darn good. And maybe that cold weather is bothering him. Ben Roethlisberger age, let's look it up. Big Ben, he was drafted in 2004 along with Eli and Phillip Rivers, who I just mentioned. Big Ben will be 39 in March. Tom Brady, 43. So, do what you will. Now, Tom Brady clearly takes much better care of himself than Ben Roethlisberger does. We'll talk about Brady here in a little bit as well. But anyways, the Browns are mad. They got embarrassed. Maybe they didn't get the break from the NFL that they should have. The Ravens, it seems, did get preferential treatment when their game got moved to a Wednesday. Cleveland, on the other hand, and I know it's the end of the season, there's less wiggle room, but it kind of doesn't seem as fair that they literally had to play with their practice squad wide receivers. In a pretty important game, by the way. So, not a bad thing, though. The Browns, that's the thing. That's why you bank those games early so that you now can afford losses like that. The Browns got humbled. In sports, athletes and folks around sports use the word humbled incorrectly quite often. The Browns got humbled. A lot of guys win an award and they're like, this is humbling. That's not how humbling works. Definition of humble is to lower someone in dignity and importance. When you lose to a 1-13 football team and you're 10-5 yourself, that is getting humbled. The Browns maybe needed humbled. Baker Mayfield, after the game, little pouty pants. Maybe he needed humbled. Maybe he could have taken more than one question if he was ready to handle what came at him Sunday. I mean, Baker's got that. Just tiger up, Baker. He basically came out with the attitude that everyone is out to get them. He basically came out and said, people can say what they want about our guys. Dude, no one has said anything yet. You've been off the field for 10 minutes. Have you been on Twitter looking at what people are saying in that 10 minutes? If so, you're an NFL quarterback. Time to move past that stuff. And I thought we had with Baker. I thought he had grown up a little. And then he takes one question, a very typical softball question, I might add, and he takes it personally, and I get you're upset, but man, that's part of being an NFL quarterback. It's so hard, I'm rooting for the Browns because I like to root for the underdog. I'd love to see the Browns go in and win a game. I'd like to see the Bills win a game. I'd like to see the Dolphins win a game. These franchises that have been down on their luck. And as a Bengals fan, I saw it, when the Bengals were good there after being bad for so long, my Browns fans' friends certainly encouraged and were happy that the Bengals were doing well and wanted to see them do well. So I feel like I owe it not only to the underdog teams, but also to most of my best friends are Browns fans. And I understand the pain they've gone through, and trust me, to watch them stick with Cleveland through thick and thin, they deserve a playoff win. But man, when Baker goes out there and acts like he's 7 years old, it makes it difficult. He needed humbled. By the way, a lot of people thought the Browns-Steelers would get flexed to the Sunday night game, and this is the last thing I'll say about this game because I've been going on up for 10 minutes now. The Sunday night flex is terrible. And I get it. I understand it. It's really, it's the Eagles and the Washington football team. By the way, we'll get into Dwayne Haskins in a minute. But Jalen Hurts and Taylor Heineke is probably what we're going to see on Sunday Night Football. Maybe Alex Smith. But even then, there wasn't something else. Maybe go with Rams-Cardinals, which is essentially a win and you're in game for both teams, depending on what the Bears do. But for the Cardinals, it's absolutely a win and you're in. Rams can lose, and if the Bears lose, the Rams still get in. But if the Bears win, and they might, we'll see. You never know. They're at home against Green Bay. If the Bears win, they're in. If the Bears win, it then becomes a play-in game between the Rams and Cardinals. Winner of that game is in, loser gets left out. Cardinals, it's win and you're in no matter what. For the Cardinals, it's a win-or-go-home situation. But you got those big TV markets, Washington, Philadelphia, both top 10 markets, both top 8 markets. And that's what they decided to do. So, I mean, it's just a boring game to end the season on. But they're consistent. They've always left it up to if there is a win and you're a division champ game, that's always what they've gone with. So that's what we got. What a bang to end the season. We started with a dud, that Texans-Chiefs game where Patrick Mahomes and company just steamrolled Houston and kicked Bill O'Brien on his way out the door. And we end it with Jalen Hurts, who looks fun, but come on. Hurts and Heineke, even if it's Hurts and Alex Smith, whatever. It'll be a great game now that we say that. Great game now that we say that. Speaking of great games, we had one on Houston. In Houston, Bengals get their second win in a row. I'm happy about it. I see people complaining about dropping in the draft, and the Bengals did. They started the day in the 3rd spot. They ended the day in the 5th spot. Of course, Sewell, Penei, I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Penei Sewell, the outstanding tackle out of Oregon, who I have not watched. Everyone just says he's outstanding. Pac-12 after dark, not really my thing. However, I don't care about that, man. I'm tired of that loser's mentality. Winning 2 games in a row and winning on the road against a franchise quarterback in Deshaun Watson, much more important than getting a tackle who you're not guaranteed is going to be any good. The draft is a crapshoot. People so quickly forget that. You know what high top 5, top 3 draft picks are good for? Quarterbacks. And the Bengals have theirs in Joe Burrow. That's it. After that, once you have your franchise quarterback, the high draft pick doesn't mean a whole lot. If you luck into it, great. If you're doing what Miami does and make a good trade and get one, cool. But I mean, look over the past 10 years. The successful teams, Seattle, New Orleans, New England, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, do they ever have top 5 picks? No. They've had franchise quarterbacks. And they are in the mix every year. Just about every year. New Orleans had that 7-9 run there for a while. They are in the mix pretty much every year because they've got their franchise guy and they build around them however they can. You don't need a top 3 pick. That's a loser's mentality to want to lose so that you can get the 3rd overall pick. There's plenty of good tackles out there. I mean, I should have put together a list of great tackles and where they were drafted. I mean, there's guys out there. It's going to be fine. I'm much more of a let's build the team chemistry, let's build the team confidence. That Pittsburgh win, and I know it's a week now, but that reeled the fan base back in. I had never seen the Bengals fan base so, what's the word? Just out of it? Not interested since Joe Burrow went down? And the Bengals just came out and put this terrible product, and then they bounced back against Pittsburgh. They put 2 wins in a row together. Zach Taylor finally gets a win on the road. You got to be happy about that. Build the momentum. Get that confidence going. By the way, for those wondering, the current NFL draft order, you got Jacksonville first. Of course, they're locked in to take Trevor Lawrence. Then you've got the New York Jets. We'll see what they do with that. And then 3rd is Houston. But remember, they traded that pick to Miami in exchange for Laramie Tunsil. So Miami right now is a playoff team, most likely, with the 3rd overall pick. 4th, you've got Atlanta. 5th, Cincinnati. 6th, Philadelphia, who's still in the mix. No, they're not in the mix. They're the only one of the 3 out of the mix. So 6th, you've got Philly, who will not make the playoffs. And 7th, Detroit. 8th, you've got the Giants. Now, they are still in the mix to win the division. That's pretty much where they'll be. They'll either have a top 10 draft pick or they will make the playoffs. Not sure that's ever happened before. 9th, Carolina. 10th, Denver. 11, Dallas, who can win the division. 12, the Chargers. After that, who really cares? In the NFC East also, by the way, there will be, because of the way things shook out this year with the AFC being so good and the NFC East just being a dumpster fire, there will be an NFC East team that picks after a 10-win, at least a 10-win AFC team in the draft. So one of those 10-win AFC teams is going to end up picking 18th, and then after that will be a NFC East team, which at most will have 7 wins. That's how it works. But a lot of momentum for the Bengals. And it was a big moment, I think. I mean, look at this. Look at the 7-day stretch. Zach Taylor beats the Steelers in primetime, wins on the road for the first time, wins back-to-back games in a 6-day stretch with a depleted team. No Joe Burrow, no Joe Mixon, no Jonah Hill, no Geno Atkins, who hasn't played a lot, but all these guys out, no Tyler Boyd. And they go out there and get a win on the road. And the Bengals, I don't think, if Joe Burrow doesn't get hurt, the Bengals are at worst 6-8-1 right now, and maybe 7-7-1. Because they might beat the Dolphins too. With Joe Burrow healthy, they scored 27 or more in 4 of the last 6. Didn't do well against Pittsburgh, didn't do well against Baltimore, but that offense was clicking. And that's with an awful offensive line. And they still found a way, and the O-line finally, for the second year in a row, getting it together at the end of the year. Don't understand that, but at any rate, the Bengals are probably 6-8-1 right now, possibly 7-7-1, and coming off a 2-win season, you can't be too mad about that. You just got to hope Joe Burrow's healthy, because if not, then everything is garbage. The world is over if Joe Burrow, for whatever reason, just can't bounce back from that knee injury. And I know medicine's advanced, and I know I've said this before, but Carson Palmer, after he tore his ACL in that 2005 wildcard game, did not look the same again for 2 years. And 2 years is kind of a lot of time in the NFL. We just talked about how bad the Browns were 3 years ago, and now look at them. Look at the Dolphins last year, started 0-7. Now they're a win away from the playoffs. Bengals get the Ravens next. Baltimore, I cannot figure out. I could see them lose on Wild Card Weekend. I could see them make it to the AFC Championship game. They've looked great for a month. Of course, they played Dallas, Jacksonville, the Giants, and they did beat Cleveland in Cleveland on Monday Night Football, but the Browns' defense could not have played worse than it did that night, and Cleveland still scored 42 points on Baltimore. I cannot figure them out. There was part of me that when I was going over what I wanted to talk about today, thought the Ravens might be the second hottest team in the AFC after the Chiefs, and there's another part of me that says, they're fool's gold. They're okay. They're what I said they were earlier in the year. And so much of it is about who's hot right now. I don't know. I don't know what to think about Baltimore. I think they're similar to Cleveland in that they're both very good, and they're both good enough to win a playoff game, but neither of them are going to go into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs for the AFC crown. And probably not Buffalo either, although Buffalo, still a team that, as I said before the season started, getting to the playoffs and winning in the playoffs, two completely different ball games. By the way, speaking of division winners, and I should have talked about this. Well, let's get into this. That's how I feel about the Ravens. You got it. Good. Dwayne Haskins cut today. No surprise. If you go back, and I'll just toot my own horn for a second here, despite my picks being awful for about a month now. When I did one of the preseason episodes, I told you Washington plus 1,800 to win the division, not a bad bet. Best head coach, arguably the best quarterback if Alex Smith ends up playing, and look at where we're at now. They are a win away from that. They were plus 1,800 at the beginning of the season. Could have made a lot of money. Dwayne Haskins cut. I know I say this about a lot of guys. I think he could work in Pittsburgh. Put him in there, see if Big Ben has another year. If not, and I tweeted out an article too that I didn't realize, and it's, we see this a lot in the NFL, probably goes unreported more often than not. Guys who get drafted to their hometowns and just don't work out. A lot of people go off to college and life gets better. They get smarter. They become more responsible. And you go back on. That's why, in college, you're off at college being this studious person involved, trying to work toward a career. Then you go home and, get blackout drunken out like an idiot all weekend long and swim in a pond filled with snapping turtles and feces. Some people do that. You go back to college, you're a different person. You're studying. You're trying to make grades. You're trying to get involved. Dwayne Haskins went back to his hometown, and I don't know. This is just based off an article I read this morning that I tweeted out. It just seems like maybe being back around his old crowd, and I'm not saying he swims in ponds. I don't know what he does. I think if you listen to the show, you know I'm a fan of Dwayne Haskins. He went to Ohio State. I went to Ohio State. I want him to work out, but I think a change of scenery is absolutely necessary. And remember, it seems like Washington has it together with Ron Rivera at the helm, but this is still Washington. This is still a team that has just stunk for decades, It's still Dan Snyder's team. It's still Dan Snyder, the guy who is allegedly, or I should read that report before I get into it, but he still is a guy who's not a stand-up guy. He is still a guy who you wouldn't be surprised to see in the next 2 or 3 years be forced to sell that team. There's only so much Ron Rivera can do. So I hope Dwayne Haskins gets another shot somewhere. I kind of hope it's not Pittsburgh. I just think it would work out in Pittsburgh. So we'll see what happens there. There's a lot of, you're at that age where Indianapolis is another place. Maybe Phillip Rivers plays another year. He signed a 2-year deal. You have to think he doesn't plan on going beyond that, but we'll see. Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, maybe Tampa. By the way, Tampa is, I'm watching them on whatever day they played, Saturday. And I was excited to watch it. I don't know if I've mentioned this or not before, but from the ages of 4 to 10, I lived not too far outside of Tampa, about an hour and a half outside. So they were the local team always on TV. I had a Mike Allstott jersey. I had a Warwick Dunn jersey. Those were those great Tony Dungy teams. So they've always been my number 2 team. I have not enjoyed this year as much as I thought I would for 2 reasons. One, the signing of Antonio Brown, who is about the biggest asshat on earth. It's tough for me to root for a team that signs him, especially when you don't need the help. You've already got the best receiving duo in football in Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And then you have to go out and sign Antonio Brown. That really steered me the wrong way. But the other thing is, it's so much more fun to watch teams develop organically rather than, and maybe this is why a lot of people don't like the NBA now. You never see that kind of organic team chemistry come together. It's just, okay, let's stick these pieces together. They'll figure it out along the way. It's so much more fun to me to watch these teams kind of come together, figure it out on their own journey. It's just, I don't know what the analogy is here, but it's not as fun to watch Tampa, who it feels like kind of went the NBA method and just got all the good guys. Got Tom Brady, got Gronk, got Antonio Brown. I don't know if they got anyone else or not. I'm sure they did. I'm trying to think on defense. But they already had the guy. If it just would have been Brady and Gronk, fine. I don't know. It's not as fun. Maybe I'm still just salty about Antonio Brown. Anyways, let's get into my picks. I am way over the time that I usually go. I went 0-3 last week in my picks. I apologize for that. I've just gone down the toilet the last few weeks. I at one point I think was 25-13 on the year. I'm now 26-20. I mean, that's horrendous. So let's see here. I would have been 1-7. So I would have been 25-13. I'm embarrassed by that. I shouldn't have said that out loud. All right, let's bounce back. Let's make it 29-20 going into the postseason. Let's start in the AFC South. I'm going to take the Titans -7.5 at Houston. The Titans can clinch the division with a win. Houston has nothing left to play for. And on Sunday, I watched Giovanni Bernard and Samaje Perine run all over Houston. So what's Derrick Henry going to do? Titans have to win. They know it. They're going to leave zero doubt heading to the fourth quarter. I like the Titans big. Swallow that 7.5 at Houston. By the way, Texans, get Deshaun Watson off the field. My God. Broncos +2.5. These are all from Bovada, by the way. I saw different lines for the Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders. This is according to Bovada. I'll take the 2.5 points with Denver. They played well against the Chargers, who, by the way, that's another team really on the upswing. Denver playing for pride. There's guys playing on there looking to keep their jobs next year. Raiders knocked out of the playoffs, nothing to play for, dejected. You see this all the time. I feel like when a team gets knocked out of the playoff hunt in Week 16, they're just done in Week 17, and they go out and lay down and die. Give me the Broncos +2.5 against the Las Vegas Raiders. And finally, Drew Brees and company. I'll swallow the 6.5 against the Panthers. The Saints are still in contention to be I think just the number 2 seed. Either way, it could be the difference in the 2 or the 3 seed for them, and that's the difference in going to Seattle or Seattle coming to you. So, again, much like I said with the Titans, I think the Saints know they need to leave no doubt. Panthers are playing well. Matt Rule appears to have them going. However, they're just not the Saints, and they're going to want to roll into the postseason on a hot streak. Sean Payton and Drew Brees know the postseason well. So give me those. I'm losing my voice here. Titans -7.5, Broncos +2.5, Saints -6.5. And that's how we'll finish out the regular season. Hoping to get a few wins, hoping to make some money. What are you going to do? If you don't have the money, don't bet the money. Or bet the money anyways and ruin your life. That's how it goes. All right, if you want to see anything I talked about on Twitter or just follow me or yell at me, it's at Matt Edwards. This is a Good Old Football Podcast. If you've been liking it this season, give it a rating, subscribe, tell your friends at your New Year's Eve gathering of 8 or less people. Reminder not to stay up until midnight, or at least not go outside until midnight. I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm going to get off here. You know how I love to ramble at the end of the show. It's the Good Old Football Podcast. We will see you again next week.